Hello my friends. We're going to do a bit of a different video today. Normally I keep things pretty relaxed and I'm usually just walking through the neighborhood with my 360 camera and the dogs, and I'm chatting about, just giving my advice on things, different dog topics, and just sort of keeping a little more loose. But I want to talk about something a bit more serious today, and that is dog aggression. Now, maybe I should do a disclaimer. This is just my opinion based in experience. I won't be giving you any direct advice on how to fix dog aggression. I don't really give a lot of direct guidance on how to do things for several reasons. Number one, well, that is my job. And if I gave all of the information in a video, there'd really be no reason to hire me. But number two, which is I think the more important reason why I don't give advice in a video, I don't know how you're going to take that advice. I don't know how you're going to implement that advice. I feel like it leaves me and other dog trainers maybe that do that open for a lot of risk. There's just no way to know what you're doing with the information. And really, even more importantly than that, every dog's an individual. And every case that I deal with when it comes to aggression or any sort of behavior for that matter is a little bit different. They're all just a little bit different. And part of my job is to start with something, typically the thing that I think is going to work the best, our training plan, and then modify the training plan as we work together, as you give me feedback, as I see how the dog's responding. We may start with one technique or tool and move to something different. But it's a very personalized thing. So I can't really see the ability to give that advice through a video. That being said, I'm going to talk generally about dog aggression and sort of what to expect and some of its causes, and at least give you some information that will help you move forward. Aggression is a very dangerous and stressful behavior to deal with, let's just be honest. Some dogs, just like some people, unfortunately, are predisposed to aggression. This can be more prevalent in certain breeds, such as guarding dogs. So just the way you might expect that a hound wants to sniff the ground more, you might expect that a guarding breed might be predisposed to aggression or guarding behavior. Doesn't mean that all guarding breeds are like that, but it could be predisposed in certain breeds. It's not typically a prevalent behavior in puppies. That would be a little weird, just like it would be a little off to see an aggressive toddler. But that being said, just like any behavior, you might be able to sort of see it, or it may become apparent at a young age. Although aggression could possibly be caused through abuse, most of the time that's not the case. And I think a lot of people believe that that's the case, that if their dog is aggressive, it must have come through some abuse in the past. I deal with a lot of owners that have had the dog since a puppy and there's been no abuse. And again, it's a temperament issue. Just like it could be a personality issue in a person, it's the same in a dog. So some dogs will just have a more aggressive or dominant temperament, and that's not caused by anything other than genetics. Aggression can be directed at either dogs or humans. Sometimes it's both. I find, in my experience at least, it's not often both, that a dog is aggressive towards other dogs and humans. Often it tends to be one or the other. Take, for instance, my pack here. So Ollie and Penny were dogs that came through rescues, whereas Chickpea I got from a breeder and raised her from a puppy. Penny is only aggressive to other dogs. You'll notice when I walk her in my videos that she's often wearing a muzzle, and that's because I have to be careful. Another dog approaches us, or if there's a stressful situation, some kid runs up to us and wants to pet with the dogs. If there's too much excitement, sometimes she'll redirect onto Chickpea and Ollie. So there are certain instances where I still use a management tool, such as the muzzle. Whereas Ollie was aggressive towards humans when I got him, and you can look back into my videos and see how he was when I first got him. He is completely trustworthy now. So some types of aggression you'll be able to even eradicate or at least greatly reduce. Some you'll reduce them as much as possible, and then you'll still deal with it through some form of management. Often fear-based aggression issues can be overcome through training, counter-conditioning, and socialization. Sometimes fear or other forms of aggression that can be based more in dominance or are part of breed characteristics, they like I said, you may end up just reducing that to a manageable level and then using a management tool such as the muzzle. So Penny is a very alpha female. Because of her breed, I suspect. As a cattle dog, she's very quick to go immediately to a bite. I mean, that is what cattle dogs do when they're driving cattle. So I do find that herding breeds tend to nip and bite faster. And I use the muzzle to protect Ollie and Chickpea. They don't need to have a bite on them if she gets frustrated on the walk or redirects in some way. So even though I trust Penny 99% of the time, I know the situations where I still use a muzzle just to make sure that the other dogs are safe. All forms of aggression, however, can be greatly reduced through training, structure, management, which may include the use of a crate, a muzzle, also different types of training collars. I say this with a caveat, this next sentence, but careful use of e-collars. So if you're going to use an e-collar for a behavioral issue, you need to consult with a professional with lots of experience. But careful use of e-collars done appropriately can greatly reduce an aggressive response. And the goal there is to reduce the initial aggressive response, which then buys us some time because there's a bit of hesitation there. So now we can start to implement a careful plan of resocialization. Where it gets difficult is if the dog's immediate response is to snap at a human or at another dog. How do you start to implement resocializing them in those situations if their immediate instinct is to attack or bite? So we've got to reduce that bite. We've got to really create a bite inhibition. And once that's in place, then we can start to do some resocialization and end up with a dog that is far less likely to bite in a situation and understands the rules and structures around their behavior. But again, any type of training tool, you need to seek the guidance of a professional, which is why I'm not telling you how to use any of these tools. I'm saying these are some tools that can be used for dog aggression cases. In the end, if the behavior is severe enough, there's a genetic disorder and it cannot be overcome, even through training, it may turn to medication in the end. In some very, very, very rare instances, it's possible that euthanizing the animal is the safest thing for everyone, but these are very extreme cases and I don't advocate for that. Nobody wants that. But some dogs will be so incredibly dangerous throughout their lives, just like some people. I sort of compare this to a serial killer, whereas there's no sort of repairing this situation. There's a disorder here that can't be overcome. Okay, let's talk about some factors. Okay, so let's address some contributing factors. Now, these aren't necessarily causes. As I said, in my opinion, in my experience with a decade of working with aggression cases, this tends to be a temperament issue. This is either the dog has a predisposition to aggression or they don't, but there are contributing factors that can make the situation worse. So when dealing with any type of aggression, often, especially dominance-based aggression, a lack of leadership. If you've got a very dominant dog or a dog that's showing some aggression or controlling issues, you've got to be a strong leader. If you're a little lackadaisical, it's not going to work out well. The dog's going to take advantage of that. Lack of rules, structure, and boundaries. So any type of behavior issue, if we've got a dog that's showing a lot of behavior issues, aggression or otherwise, lots of rules, structure, and boundaries are going to help us out there. So they've got to have a more strict way in being handled than a dog that's just relaxed, mellow, and easygoing. They can be difficult dogs to handle for sure. Fear. If your dog has a lot of fear, that can create aggression. Dogs will bite quicker out of fear than a confident dog that's more aggressive. So certainly fear is one of the biggest contributing factors. Genetics. I've heard the term idiopathic aggression before. Idiopathic really just means we don't know what's causing it. So typically that is genetics, but in my opinion, again, most of this comes from genetics and a temperament. Breed traits. So as we talked about earlier, a guarding breed will probably have a higher likelihood or predisposition for aggressive behavior. They tend to be more dominant and more high-strung. So for sure, breed traits can play into that, but that doesn't mean that all guarding breeds are like this. Lots of guarding breeds are easygoing and friendly too. Sibling rivalry. So if you've got aggression between the dogs and they came from the same litter, that can be an issue. Typically, in my experience, I've seen two females together have a higher risk of aggression than two males under that, and typically male-female do really well together. It's not often that there's a lot of aggression issues between a male and a female dog living together. So what are our protocols? How do we begin to get over this? And again, these are generalities. I'm not giving direct advice, but this is some protocols on how to move forward. So first thing is going to be muzzle conditioning. Whether your dog is aggressive to another dog or aggressive to human beings, if we want to work with them in a training scenario, to give you an example again, when I was working with Penny initially around Chickpea, we didn't have Ollie at the time, I would put a muzzle on her so that she was safe and I could start to integrate her with Chickpea, and if she tried to bite Chickpea, she couldn't. So the muzzle makes this safe. You'll want a basket style muzzle. I know people want to get the fabric style muzzles, but the problem is if it's fit so well that the dog can't open their mouth and bite, then they can't even pant either. And on a nice warm day like this, that's not fair. So basket muzzles, full protection against a bite, but still allows the dog to do whatever they would do normally. Your dog can pant in here and bark and breathe normally. You can actually offer treats through the bottom here. They can drink water through this. The only thing they can't do is successfully bite. Okay, so basket style muzzle. And make sure it's fit properly. I have a muzzle conditioning video you can find way back in the YouTube channel that will discuss all of that in more detail. Initially, if I have a dog with a lot of behavior problems, I'm going to remove a lot of their possessions, toys, blankets, beds, bones, that sort of thing. This isn't to be mean to the dog. This is so I can control everything in the situation. I want the dog to understand that everything comes through me as the leader and owner, and that good behavior leads to rewards. And in the beginning, this just helps to sort of settle them into their place in the pack. I want my dog, if I have a dog with a lot of behavior problems, my dog needs to understand that they are not the leader, that I am the leader in this situation. They need to be subordinate. So they'll earn a lot of these things, the toys and bones and food rewards. All of this will come as we work together. But in the beginning, I want to control everything so there's no sort of free lunch, so to speak. Structured feeding, I'm a fan of that for all dogs, but doesn't need to be for all dogs, that's for sure. But I have my dogs sit and wait for their food. I release them, they take their food. Then our dogs go back to their beds, and then I take the bowls away. So our dogs even understand, don't go and look at another dog's food bowl. That can cause a problem. So if you have multiple dogs in the same household, I don't allow our dogs to mingle around each other's food bowls. They eat, they go back to their beds, and I remove the food bowls. And it's very structured. And again, this is a chance for me to reiterate to my dogs that I am in charge, that I'm the leader, and that I control the resources, and everything good comes through me. Certainly crate training, so if we have an aggression case, especially if it's with human beings, or in our case, Penny has been aggressive with the other dogs in the past, so if we leave the house, sometimes we leave Chickpea and Ollie out, and Penny goes in her crate. If that seems unfair to you, well, that's unfortunate, because Penny is the one with the issue, and Chickpea and Ollie do not have that issue. So even if you have 3 dogs in your pack, like I do, maybe you have to work with one dog differently than the other dogs, because that's just the way it is. Not all the dogs are equally loved by my wife and I, but not all the dogs have equal behavior, if that makes sense. Basic obedience training will certainly help. How does it help? Well, it just, again, is adding more rules and structure. It's reiterating that you're in charge, that you're the leader, and that there are certain expectations, that when I say sit, you sit, and when I say down, you down. So basic obedience training can really help the dog understand that there's a pack structure, that there's a leader and a follower, and the dog is the follower. There needs to be some type of consequence for an unwanted behavior. There should be lots and lots of positive reinforcement in anybody's training plan, but positive reinforcement, as the name already states, reinforces a behavior. So you can't reduce a behavior with food rewards or any type of reward. That's not how it works. So there needs to be some sort of negative consequence. Let's just say that hitting or anything like that is completely off of the table, but that's where something like an e-collar can come into play, so that you can get just the lowest possible setting, the right timing, and reduce the aggression. But these tools need to be used carefully And that's again why you need to speak with a trainer. But there does need to be some sort of negative feedback for an unwanted behavior, such as aggression, so the dog understands that that behavior will not be tolerated. After this, we need to start to re-socialize the dog. We need to counter-condition them to the situations that they were showing aggression in previously and show them that there's no need for aggression in that situation, that a better choice leads to a reward, and begin the re-socialization process. So starting to put them around people in a positive way, starting to put them around dogs in a positive way. And in the beginning, that's often just neutrality. Just having the dog around some other dogs, not interacting, or having the dog around some new people, but not interacting, and really just building a neutral state around the dog or people. If everything here that we've tried is not working, then we may need to speak with the vet in conjunction with training to discuss medication options. I see this as a last resort, not because medication is bad in any way, but often a lot of these issues can be resolved through all of the other protocols I've discussed here. And sadly, as I mentioned, in some very extreme cases where the dog just poses too high of a risk, you have several choices. You can rehome the dog, you can work through the behaviors and keep the dog, or unfortunately, euthanizing the animal. And if you're honest with people, often rehoming can be very difficult, because if you're telling people you have an aggressive dog, there's going to be a very small pool of owners that are dedicated, that are experienced, that will take on a dog like that, like myself, who took on 2 aggressive dogs. So that can be very difficult. Obviously, the preferred option is the dog stays in the home with a loving family, and we work through these issues and we get the dog to as good of a place as we can. But sadly, if you can't rehome the dog and you've got small children and the dog poses a risk, you may have to make a very difficult decision, and nobody wants to make that decision. I'm not advocating for euthanizing dogs, but in extreme circumstances, it might be the best answer for everyone. Again, this is probably a dog with a severe genetic issue or a brain disorder of some kind, where the aggression, even through training, everything has failed, and it's just truly an aggressive dog that will not be turned around. These are very, very, very rare cases, let me reiterate that. I've never advised anyone to euthanize their dog. That's a decision each owner has to make. My job is to lay out all of the options, and unfortunately that is one of the options. Okay, I think that's all I have to say on aggression. If you need to work through an aggression case, reach out to an experienced trainer that's worked with a lot of aggressive dogs. I've tried every possible technique. I have a big bag of tricks and techniques and things that we can work through, which is why I tend to get a lot of success, because if one thing's not working, we'll switch to another thing, because every case is a little bit different. So if you have questions, you can always reach out to me through my website. Please, if you're struggling with something like this, know that there is hope, and you just need to find a good trainer experienced in this to work with. All the best, and I hope your dogs are friendly and you don't have to go through this, but some of us will get a dog like this, and that's just the way it is. All right, until the next video, take care, enjoy your dogs.